Thank you for having me. I would have preferred to have come before Martin Parr and his whole life in photography, but I guess I'll take the challenge. So just very briefly on Mother, for those of you who don't know. Mother's an independent creative company. It's 23 years old. It's based in Shoreditch. And these are the photos of our mothers hanging out and reception. And we have a very simple philosophy. We try to go there every day and to behave in a way and to make work that we make our mothers proud. So I guess today counts as one of those. So thank you very much, doubly, for having me. And if you don't mind, I'm going to eat into my 10 minutes to prove to her that was actually here. All right, thank you very much. So I'm not here to talk about myself or Mother today. We're here to talk about Ikea, this Swedish flat pack furniture giant. Mother and Ikea go a long way back. We've had them as a client for 10 years, and we have a pretty special relationship with them as clients. We are very, very fortunate to have the main client be the same client that we had for all this time, and she happens to be a very, very creative being herself. And on this very specific topic, she's also a massive grime fan, so it wasn't that hard to sell this out to her. But a little fun fact, yeah, I'd hoped that those things would work. A little fun fact that Ikea never done a Christmas ad in the UK, so this is the first one. And we actually didn't know much about how we'd go about doing this. You know, it was the first time and everything, what would be the credible role for it. But we knew one thing, that we didn't want to do like a saccharine, overly manicured, kind of expected type of Christmas ad. We wanted to try and bring something new, something fresh to the party. And it turns out during the research period of this and how we find a role for Ikea, that like a really large number of people are not hosting and not bringing anyone home because they're incredibly ashamed of how their home looks. So, and you know, we really came out in research that people have this inner voices telling them that it's not good enough, it's not perfect enough, it's not what the model house looks like. But we actually very, very quickly realized that with small, tiny kind of changes, you can make a huge transformation. If anyone watches Queer Eye here, you see the effect that it has. But then we took on the challenge. We said, like, this is really interesting, really kind of like a very unusual Christmas kind of topic to talk about, and it could last the whole year. And then just like to go into the process a little bit, we wrote loads of scripts, as you do when you get a brief like that, presented around 5 or 6, narrowed down to 3, and we made them into things that we called animatics to put into research. So in case you're wondering, animatics are these horrendous animations that we do to test ideas before the brands spend millions back in them. So the first version of your idea you're going to see is something like this. And very curiously, in this case, to talk about how brave the client is again, we put 3 into testing, and this one came bottom. But gut instinct told us all that the bigger rewards were sitting here, as well as the bigger risks. So I apologize in advance for putting you through this, and I promise to make up for it later. So this is a bit of the animatic.
This place is a mess. You don't deserve any guests. There's no way that anyone here is gonna RSVP yes. This place is a dive. Do yourself a big favor, go to your Uncle Clive's. Or at least to a neighbour. That busted up wall seen way better days. Not to mention your whole colour scheme's beige. This table's older than the pyramids, but at least it's younger than the mirror is. This place is so small that it's barely a house. Never mind the cat, you couldn't swing a mouse.
And well, a lot has been talked about the credibility of the actual track, how genuine it felt like. But it turns out that, you know, the two members of our team, the client herself and the copywriter, massive grime fans. So we ended up writing like quite a big chunk of the lyrics, as if you know the actual film. So it was a real amazing collaborative thing. So just a little bit on Ikea as well. Like we tried to, you know, our best work with them has had great tracks against them, but never ever mainstream artists. More often we're trying to give it as a platform for unsung heroes or people that didn't have the visibility that they deserve. And we actually, funnily enough, had such a privilege on this one because people, the artists loved the idea. So we had a final shootout between P Money and DWE. And I'm not going to pretend to be a grime literate myself, but I've been told this was a pretty big deal. And then always spoke to them about it's just like, make it feel your own. Like, make it feel like this could be in one of your albums. So this is the secret to this being like loved. And I've also been told that it has to be 140 beats per minute. That's how grime goes. So there you go. I know a little bit about grime now. So we had a casting session. This is the most unusual casting session I've ever been in. So this sad bunch here are the rejects, and these are the selects. So you recognize them from it. It was so much fun, and literally, when you're writing onto some of like this, like you know it pretty immediately by exposing it idea to other creative collaborators, how strong this could be. So people jumped on it, from props people to actual like storyboard artists that got really kind of like good at actually depicting the final emotions that you find in the ad. But peculiarly, this is a really like boring shoot actually. As I say, a lot of green screens, a lot of inanimate objects. So this is actually one of the most interesting shots from the actual shoot. But the real magic on this one, needless to say, happened in post. So scan the objects and then created the 3D versions of themselves. So we started to see like, wow, this is gonna be really, really special. And you would be amazed by how many back and forth we had in the expression of this fucking teapot. Sorry for swearing. Might have been about 100 emails. But, we were all really, really desperately trying to not only just kind of breathe life into them, but to actually create a little bit of that kind of like body language, that swagger that a kind of grime artists have when they perform. And then...
Excuse me, please. This is very, 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 very unacceptable. Okay, let's walk around. I'll give the house a scan. Oops, doorknob broke off into my hand.
So many incredible companies collaborated on this. But we really, really studied. So the next step was to kind of drop them into the live action. So you see like very crude, rudimentary versions of this little fellas being dropped into the edit, so we could start finally seeing like the light at the end of the tunnel, like what this would actually end up being. So loads of kind of like versions, iterations, every day like a new thing dropping into the edit and just giving us a sense of like what the real thing would be like. Until after a very, very long and arduous process and loads of like people, entire armies of people doing these animations, we got to the finished film. So graded it afterwards and put it all together. And and it was like an incredible moment in time. So I'll play it to you for those who haven't seen it. If you can put the volume louder so you guys can enjoy it fully. So here's the actual final product.
But I must confess, this place ain't blessed. This place is a mess. Disgusting. But no, you don't deserve no guest. No. In here, I don't want to lay down or rest. Are you crazy? That crack in the wall needs addressing. The state of the floor is just depressing. Man. This table's older than the pyramids. Older? At least it's younger than the mirror is. This place is small, and it's barely a house. Never mind the cat, you couldn't even swing a mouse. It's so small. Those curtains are looking tired. Decorations are tired. Look, your style is fired. It's like somebody hit you with a bulldozer. If your house was a car, it would get pulled over. Excuse me, please. This is very, 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 very unacceptable. Oh my God.
Silence the critics. Ikea, the wonderful everyday.
Fresh and clean. But
So we were expecting like good reaction, but we weren't quite prepared like to what happened out there. So like being like advertising being written about in the Guardian about the credibility of a track choice for a Christmas ad is not something you're planning on getting. But I guess you know the authenticity was something that everybody fought very hard in the beginning of this journey to keep actually ended up paying dividends, and people genuinely enjoy the craft and the art and the unexpected nature of like Ikea bringing grime to the masses. You know, people are quite savvy these days. They kind of see stuff that is expected, and to bring something quite fresh to cause this reaction is real privilege. There was no pre-agreement between us, DWE, right in the middle. This is like the mother team, all the music guys, of actually like releasing the single, because artists are always quite precious about their image, credibility themselves, but it became an inevitability once it kind of broke and it started to become really popular, famous, and actually add to the credibility of the artist himself. So he's back in the studio 2 days later and finished the single. So in a couple of days we had to do a single cover, which is one of the best briefs I've ever got. And again, this gift that keeps on giving, Greg James, massive fan, and it actually broke on Breakfast with Greg James on BBC Radio 1. So this is a little snippet of how he announced it.
And now, a world-exclusive first play on Radio on Breakfast. This is DWE, Fresh and Clean.
Radio 1 Breakfast.
With Greg James. And when you've heard this, you'll be up to date with all the latest things.
Ridiculous. And obviously, any respectable single deserves a music video. So the creative directors on the account doubled up as music video directors. So 2 weeks later, we had this.
But I must confess, this place ain't blessed. This place is a mess. Disgusting. But no, you don't deserve no guest. No. In here, I don't want to lay down or rest. Are you crazy? That crack in the wall needs addressing. The state of the floor is just depressing.
And to finish it all up, it gets even more ridiculous, believe me or not. This is the last piece, but it just came out yesterday. So Greg James couldn't get enough of it. So he got DWE back in there and got listeners to send what they thought should make part of a retrospective of 2019 to be sung by him, you know, incorporated in this track. So this is a snippet of that.
These days you can't trust nobody. No one. Pauline Rooney, all because of Rebecca Vardy. She's not posting on social media hardly. Online you gotta be moving smartly. Trust me. But I think that was bang out of order. Uber Eats, yeah, man, need to order. I'm hungry. Listen, Claire, and follow my order. Yeah, I'm like John Burko when I'm making an order.
And that's it. Thank you so much, guys.